All right, we're here. Time for another edition of the Tight 10. What's going on, everybody? It's Zane Donani. I'm your host. I read you the news. Hopefully, I do it better than Cheryl Scott or whoever else you listen to that does news. I guess she's a weather girl here in Chicago. But yeah, my job here is to provide you the best news and notes and data around training camp and OTAs and what the teams are thinking. Coined myself as an NFL Signal Analyst as of right now. So really appreciate it. Um, Anybody that wants to join the chat, today's going to be short, so please feel free to drop questions. I know there's a lot of people that have been asking me questions on Twitter about different players that they're interested in knowing more about. Um, right now is a great time to do that because starting here in the next week or so, training camp is going to be hot and heavy, and it's going to be really, really tough to get you through all the news and then also answer questions. I'll try to set some time aside on Saturdays and Sundays to do so. But without further ado, if you have any questions, feel free to say it in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to get going right now. All right. Back from where we left off, I wanted to do a quick reminder for you guys. So yesterday, I did a live stream draft with John Sarabian of Run Pure Sports, and a lot of people may not have tuned in when I was tweeting about Darren Waller last, uh, basically a month ago. Basically, what happened? He did an interview on Yahoo that nobody saw. Like I didn't even see it, and I was just googling him because I was just curious where he's going and what his plan is. And then I saw that he was at Tight End University in the background of a George Kittle video. And then I went to the Tight End University Instagram page and saw a picture of him working out at Tight End U. Um, and then there was this interview from May 14th where he was basically telling some people from Yahoo Sports that I had never heard of, like C Team, D Team, something like that. And he was just like, I've been training since the day after the Super Bowl, 5 days a week nonstop for 12 weeks now. So I've been approaching it like I'm playing. I ain't trying, I ain't training like this for nothing. I'll tell you that. And so my thought process, man, guys, he was not doing much before the season last year. Wasn't nobody was sure whether or not he was going to play. And then he comes into it and he still has some spike weeks last year. I think he's very alive to do something. He even said in this interview that he wanted to go to a contender, but he's willing to go kind of anywhere, just depending on what the situation is. So I just want to make sure people know that there's a reminder that hey, Darren Waller is working out diligently behind the scenes, and he is super live to be on a team this year. We saw it last year. He had a couple of weeks where he scored over 20 fantasy points. So I think that he's a great like late round pick. Or if you're doing a redraft league or dynasty, like a guy that you can stream and just put in your lineup because when he plays, he can go nuclear. I watched this interview that nobody else really saw because it was on a local radio show with Eric DeCosta, the GM of the Ravens, and he was talking about Zay Flowers, right? He was basically saying like, "Hey, we want to get this deal done. We want to keep him on the team." You guys have seen it. It's really hard to keep to to have wide receivers hit free agency these days. The reason why is because the cost of finding a receiver is so high. You have to give up a lot of draft picks to get a difference maker at receiver. So the type of talent that you end up seeing are guys like Romeo Dubs, who's good but questionably good. Um, and so nowadays, what you're going to see is just like guys are going to get deals done, man. And if a team doesn't want them, they're going to trade them. But the Ravens definitely want to keep Zay Flowers around. He is a top tier receiver. In my opinion, if you watch the film, he's a really good receiver. Um, just in a kind of like an odd situation where they just don't have the same amount of pass yards as like a Joe Burrow offense or a Jared Goff offense. But I think he's super live to do big things this season. I know last year he had over 1,200 yards. Maybe the touchdowns will come too. He's a guy that can do a lot of things yards after catch. If they kind of like having a guy like Rashad Bateman uh, actually like healthy and Devontae Walker and some of these guys that can do like more of the deep stuff allows Zay Flowers to play more underneath, which will allow him to score more touchdowns too. Because underneath guys actually score more touchdowns because they get open in small spaces. They do a lot of things yards after the catch. I'm excited about Zay Flowers this season. On top of that, in this interview, Mr. Eric DaCosta, good morning, by the way, Hulk smash potatoes. I am keeping an eye on the chat. If you guys have questions, I'm here to answer them. I'll get to all of them, I promise. Can be on here as long as you guys want. Um, GM Eric DaCosta was also talking about Rashad Bateman yesterday, and I think this is something that people aren't really spending much time thinking through. But Rashad Bateman, um, if they don't end up signing a guy like Stephon Diggs, they really want to give him more opportunities to show what he can do. And I know people are tired of being burned by Rashad Bateman. The film is way better than the numbers that he's put out there over time. But I think the big thing here is like he's definitely going to be wide receiver 2 for the team. Um, they say, hey, he's a good athlete, good route runner. I completely agree on both of those fronts. He's just not healthy half the time. When he is healthy, he can be a difference maker for the team. I do think that if he went to a different team next year, um, depending on which team it is, like if Devontae Adams retires and he goes to the Rams or something like kind of random like that, and he gets on a really strong training program and does like the Christian Watson program, like I think that he would be super live to do something nice, not necessarily be like a game breaker in terms of fantasy, but something that like is way above what his perception is right now. But they're going to give him opportunities as long as they don't sign a veteran free agent. I think there's probably like a 25% chance that they do something like that with Stephon Diggs. Nobody else that's out there, I think, is like too live to take too much from Rashad Bateman. If you haven't watched all of my other videos, they all build on top of each other, so it's a good time to go out and watch them, catch up before training camp, know all of the latest news and notes, so that you can catch up and just be ready for what training camp brings us, basically. The Bears team website put out an article about tight ends. They were talking about Colston Loveland, and some of these quotes are a little bit old, but they're from Ben Johnson and they're also from Caleb Williams. Basically, Ben Johnson is saying that this guy, Colston Loveland, is basically going to be somebody that they're going to rely on heavily, an integral role on the offense. And that should be obvious for most people, but I just want to make sure people know, like, hey, he's going to be a focal point for this offense. They're going to consolidate everything down to their top three guys between Colston Loveland, Luther Burden, and Roma Dunes. Dunes I covered yesterday that there is some concern around his foot. So I do think that there's something around that I would be a little bit concerned about. Okay, I'm seeing some chats live too. I'll get to the questions here after I talk about Colston Loveland. Um, but yeah, basically he's going to be an integral part of the offense. The question is whether he's like option 2, if he's option 3, or he's option 1. And I think the odds are that he is at least option 2. And then it's really a question to me of whether it's Luther Burden or him that end up being the top option on the season. And that's great for a guy that's going in like the 4th round right now. I think he could be a good value, especially if you're building a portfolio, a guy that I think you want to be in on at his current cost, because you can take him sometimes and you can take Luther Burden other times. I think it's very, very obvious to me that one of those two guys are going to smash in fantasy this year, and you just got to kind of pick and choose your spots. Again, and also have an expanded route tree this season. All right, I'm going to answer a couple questions in the chat real quick. There's a question about Josh Downs and his role. Yeah, guys, I think that from everything that I've read, he is playing that Z receiver role, which means he will play on the outside this season. And he did practice on the outside in OTAs, maybe out of necessity. Alec Pierce wasn't there, but he did practice on the outside. They're giving him the opportunity to do so. And the way that they talk about utilizing him is, he's obviously a guy that's a little bit smaller, so people are concerned, right? Concerned about what he could do from that outside role, but they do want to use him in motion, get him on the move, get him off the line of scrimmage so he doesn't get jammed. And I think that's something he can definitely do. I think he could deal with some jam at the line of scrimmage anyway. It depends on how big the cornerbacks are. Like if you're going against a team like Seattle who likes to put bigger guys out there, yeah, maybe you don't want to do that. But there's definitely cornerbacks like that are smaller that he could still win against off the line of scrimmage. But he's one of my biggest like values, I think, right now. I tweeted about him yesterday. His yardage prop, which I don't think is the best way to evaluate things, is above a guy like Jordan Addison and Jaden Reed. And I think he should definitely be going above both of those guys because I think his opportunity is much higher. I think he's super live to be the favorite target in this Colts offense this season. Um, it's to me, it's either going to be him or Tyler Warren that ends up with the most targets for that team. Uh, so yeah, I think he's a great value. Another question from the chat: the buzz is always Diggs to Commanders, but also the Ravens. Seems like that would be a better offense to go to. Yeah, guys, I think this is an interesting question. I actually prefer him going to the Commanders. I would probably project them to not have as many pass yards available as like a Lamar led offense for the Ravens. Um, but I do think that I said this on the live stream with John Sarabian yesterday. It seems a little bit hot takey, but I think that his talent level is still really high, and he has to be used in a more short depth of route like role. And so I do think that he could be the guy that gets more targets between him and Terry McLaurin. I really like McLaurin too. I do, but I don't think there would be I think there's an outside shot that he would lead the team in targets above Terry McLaurin if he went to the Commanders. Even though there's that rapport with Jaden Daniels and different things like that, it's just the role that he would play. He'd probably play more of a slot role, sometimes on the outside. Like he's not going to just stay in the slot because the team's going to go in 12 personnel sometimes with two tight ends out there. But yeah, I definitely think that he has a chance to be a top receiver for that team. I don't think that he would do that for the Ravens because I think Zay Flowers is like a cut above that the Terry McLaurin type of talent. So yeah, I'm super in on Diggs, regardless of where he goes. Really, like his price right now is way too cheap. He's definitely going to be on a team within the next 2 or 3 weeks. So right now is the time to buy until that news breaks. And then once it breaks, I still think the price will be too cheap. Like I was debating this in my head yesterday, but if you went around where Jaden Reed and Jordan Addison are too, I'd still rather have Stephon Diggs. He had 1,000 yards last year. He didn't even play that much. Like he was playing 60% of the routes, and he looked really good in a lot of games too. So, and yeah, he may not be the man coverage beater that he used to be, but he is still the zone beater, and most teams play zone in the NFL. Like there's very few teams that lean heavily into man coverage. So you could definitely determine like by matchup who you'd want to go after when you'd want to put him into. Okay, I'm gonna keep going, and then I'll get back to some of the chat questions because I want to make sure that we get through all the news as well. All right. So there was something on the Seahawks backfield that I keep tweeting about this, and I think people are still, hey, it's going to be Jadarian Price based off the draft capital, and I think that's pretty like I think it's pretty obvious that he's going to get a bunch of touches. It's just not fully obvious to people that there's going to be other people involved. And so it's not that I don't like Jadarian Price like getting rushing carries and stuff like that. I'm just like worried about the role specifically based off of everything that I'm hearing from the team. Scouts that I truly trust that are like Holani is actually a pretty good football player, not like just some dude that's a UDFA they signed. It takes a lot for UDFAs to like get any sort of role for a team. So for him to be able to stick around and actually get a role is pretty huge. And I talked about this yesterday, but it reminds me of Rico Dowdle, where it's like this guy had a lot of talent, some weird situations in college where he got kind of like overshadowed, and then comes in here and sticks around and makes a role for himself. So basically, what this article from the Seahawks team website is basically saying that every single player, Jadarian Price, George Holani, Emmanuel Wilson, and Zach Charbonnet, are essentially all going to have roles. I think that when Charbonnet comes back, you may see George Holani and Emmanuel Wilson get squeezed a little bit. If George Holani looks really good running the ball, I mean, you really don't know how that backfield is going to play out. This team is incentivized to win games. They're not here to just be like, hey, and it's a tough division too. They're not here to just be like, hey, we're just going to feed Jadarian Price, and if he's like struggling out there, that they are just going to keep doing that. They're not going to do that. They're going to go with whoever presents them the best opportunity to win games. George Holani has a lot of respect in that locker room from the coaching staff, from everything that I've read when it comes to pass blocking and pass catching. So I think he's pretty much, and Jadarian Price, like, there's been some chatter about, hey, he can do it. He just didn't do it in college. And I agree that there's like players that can like step it up when they have the time to do that. But we see this with rookies all the time, even really strong pass catching type of guys like Travion Henderson's profile. Like teams are not willing to just give it to a rookie a lot of times because there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of trust that needs to be there from a pass pro perspective. Um, and like doing the right things, leaking out at the right time. A lot of times these are like guys that need to chip and release as well. And it takes a lot of practice and reps to do that. I think George Holani will definitely have that third down role at the very least. And then some rushes as well. And if he does better than Jadarian Price rushing the ball, could he take on more? Sure. And then it says that Emmanuel Wilson would likely have kind of like a short yardage situation type of role. Um, I think that could be debatable between him and Jadarian Price right now. And then you never know if for some reason they just say, you know what, we did this thing with Zach Charbonnet last year, and we're just gonna go two backs. And for some reason we like Holani in a short yardage role. So I I think it's just really up in the air. And I don't really love the Jadarian Price price point right now. I'd like for him to fall maybe another round, and then I'd be probably back in if he's going near Chuba Hubbard. All right. That was a lot on the Seahawks backfield. But anyway, let's get into the Vikings. So I was reading an article by Matt Collar, who's a Vikings insider, has credentials for the team. He's a great resource. He has his own kind of website, does podcasts, stuff like that. Something that I think people don't really listen to that much unless you're a true Vikings fan. But they're talking about this offense doing runs out of the shotgun. Um, and a lot of people were making a big deal of like, hey, Kyler can't go under center, he can't do this. And I think that they're trying to tweak their offense based off like that's my tea leaves on this. Tweak their offense to be more Kyler friendly, be more shotgun oriented. That doesn't necessarily help the run game. It's better to run from under center, but they don't. What they want to do is make this better for a Kyler Murray. So I think that they're going to operate out of the gun more often, and that should help Kyler quite a bit. All right, there was some, and this might be a little hot takey too. I'm not trying to be a hot take guy, but I do think that there's things that I have perspective on that are different than what I think the market really feels, and I try to voice that to you guys because I think that it's valuable for you guys to hear other opinions on what's going on. Everybody likes to make fun of Aaron Glenn. I like to make fun of Aaron Glenn. He had like he was a bad coach last year in general, and their defense didn't get an interception. It was like a record, but I will put this out there that there have been situations where Frank Reich, the offensive coordinator and new play caller for the Jets, has had strong success in the NFL. He's also looked terrible, but he's also had strong success, and his success wasn't just predicated on Andrew Luck. And I think that's what's important is that when people think about the success that Frank Reich had, they think, hey, well, he had Andrew Luck, like maybe he's an Andrew Luck merchant. And the funny thing to me is that that's not necessarily true. So he had three out of 8 seasons where he's been a head coach or an offensive coordinator, and 8 seasons where he's been a head coach or an offensive coordinator. 3 of those seasons he's been top 10 in pass yards. 4 of those seasons he's been top 10 in points per game. So what I'm kind of trying to say here is that I think it's a super high variance situation for Geno and the offense. Let's say that the defense is terrible. I don't care, man. This is fantasy football. If the defense is terrible and for some reason Frank Reich is able to get things right on the offense, this offensive line is way better than the Raiders offensive line from last year, which was almost like record bad. Like you can look at rankings and be like, oh yeah, that they were 32nd, and then this offensive line is like, on consensus boards like roughly like 18th to 20th or something like that, and be like, yeah, that's a small improvement. No, this is like record bad to like adequate. And I think that's huge for a guy like Geno because he needs the time to throw. He's absolutely terrible under pressure. So I keep thinking about this and I'm like, guys, there's going to be matchups where Geno's putting up points and it's going to benefit Garrett Wilson. It's going to benefit Breece Hall. I think we're underrating what this offense could look like. So for those 4 seasons where they were top 10 in points per game, the quarterbacks were 2017 Carson Wentz, so that was back to the Eagles. 2018 Andrew Luck, so the Colts, and then 2020 with Phillip Rivers. So this is Colts Phillip Rivers, and then 2021 with Carson Wentz on the Colts also. And then the top 10 pass offenses was 2015 with Phillip Rivers, so that's still a good quarterback, but just with the Chargers. Andrew Luck with the Colts in 2018, and then Matt Ryan with the Colts in 2022. Matt Ryan was kind of washed at that point too. So like this is not some list of guys that like are just world beaters by any means. I think we should be like, I like taking Geno Smith late in drafts right now because I think that people are overrating that he's just not going to be playing at the end of the season. I think he's going to play at least 13 games. And in best ball formats, that's still cool. Like, I like that because he's going to, as a quarterback 3, it's hard to find guys late. It's super hard to find guys late. Right now, quarterbacks getting pushed up. Everybody's leaning into a 3 quarterback strategy in best ball. And he's one of the guys that I'm like, okay, who's the ugly duckling that everybody doesn't like year over year, right? And like 2 years ago, Sam Darnold. Even last year was Sam Darnold somewhat. 3 years ago was Baker Mayfield. And there's guys like that just come out of nowhere where it's like, yeah, he sucked. Like, I didn't really like him, but they were in terrible situations, and that's what Geno is. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I don't think that those other guys, well, Sam Darnold's a little bit different. But I don't think that Baker's like an incredible quarterback by any means. It's just like situational, like getting a good offensive line, having some time to throw. So I'm banging the table for Geno as like one of my favorite like late round quarterbacks. If you're just like, hey, I need something as my 3rd quarterback or 2nd quarterback or something. I actually think that he's live, and I think he's live to start the full season. If for some reason this team performs okay, let's just say that they're 5-10, and there's a question like, is Aaron Glenn going to keep his job or not? And he's like fighting for his life, and they just don't decide to fire him during the season. Geno's going to be the quarterback during that time because he knows that he needs to win a few more games and end the season on positive momentum. All right. I am dropping these videos daily or roughly daily. I can't commit to a certain schedule. So I apologize about that, but you guys can subscribe and like and share with your friends. All right. There's another video that came out that was talking about the Raiders quarterback situation. And the drumbeat is that Kirk Cousins is basically going to start week 1, right? So I keep hearing it this way from every article, from NFL insiders, from ESPN, Jeremy Fowler. All the trusted sources are basically pointing to this. And I think it's the right choice, too. There's a small chance that Mendoza wins that opportunity to start the season, but I don't think that they're going to lean into that, even if he looks good. Like, I think that what they want to do, they brought in Tyler Linderbaum. They brought in Jalen Naylor. They need this team. They have a huge question mark at right offensive tackle. And I think what they need to do is just kind of let that offensive line gel. Let Mendoza learn the playbook. Let him watch some film of like their offense in action against a live defense, like with Kirk Cousins. Let him get his footwork. He's not familiar with being under center as much, and that's how this offense wants to run. Let him get his footwork right and keep practicing, and then eventually put him out there in a favorable situation. And the hard thing is that their schedule is really difficult because their division's pretty good. But I think that like week 8 to me is like the right time to do it because I looked at the schedule and you get the Jets in week 8, and that just seems like, all right, let's take the training wheels off. Let's let him go play against this like kind of cupcake defense and then see how he does. I got to 10,000 followers the other day, and I just wanted to do something for you guys, right? My fans, the people that are following me. I'm celebrating my 10K followers by giving out a freebie. I called it Freebie Friday that I put out yesterday. The contest rules are 1, follow me, 2, retweet this tweet, comment on a player that you want to know more about, and then 3, subscribe to the Cut Up, which if you're watching this, you might already be subscribed. Share with your friends. This is just something that, I'm doing for fun. Literally like no money really involved in this. So the freebie is 2 preseason tickets to see your favorite team. And I know that might not be the most desirable thing for everybody, but I think preseason games are fun, especially if you're a fantasy nut. It's fun to go out there and see rookies. When I went to a preseason game for the Bears a couple years ago, I saw Caleb Williams do some incredible magic out there, and it was a blast. So there was a podcast with Matt Collar where he was talking about Jauan Jennings, and he was talking about like how he's going to be implemented into the offense. And yeah, free is always desirable. Thanks, guys, for the chat. Really appreciate that. I'm going to get to the rest of those questions too. I'm going to try to get through more of this content. There's not too much more because there's not as much news going on right now, and then I'll answer more questions. And feel free to like rapid fire them too, especially when I get to it. For Jauan Jennings, the role that they're kind of throwing out there right now, they're basically saying he's not going to be able to replace what Jalen Nailor did and how they implemented Jalen Nailor into that offense as a deep threat. And I know a lot of people think, hey, Kyler, great deep ball thrower. You know what? Ever since his injuries, he hasn't been as much of a deep ball thrower. In terms of the percentage of his pass attempts that actually are deep balls, he's below average right now. And then on top of that, his accuracy on those deep balls are not great. So keeping it short and intermediate, that's going to play into Jauan Jennings and Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison's going to be the deep threat. He was about a 21% deep route share last year. And adding a guy like Jauan Jennings and taking away a guy like Jalen Nailor is going to push him, in my opinion, above that 25% threshold. It's always better to do more short stuff than deep stuff. And, I talked about his receiving yardage line. It's at 675.5, which is pretty low. There's guys that go near him that are, their lines are closer to like 800 yards, 750, stuff like that. I know people are talking about touchdowns, and yes, I do think touchdowns are something that like regress over time. I also think that Jauan Jennings is a touchdown monster. He's really, really good possession receiver, tough in the red zone, like willing to hold on to balls and have cracked ribs. We saw that last year. I think we're underrating what Jauan Jennings brings to this offense and what he may do in terms of taking away from a Jordan Addison. I think Jordan Addison's a great player. I just don't think it's the right role or fit in this offense. And so that's my concern. I'd actually drafted a ton of Jordan Addison, like when drafts were released too. So I feel terrible about this. And this is one player that I've changed my opinion on a ton. So yeah, I'm worried about this. Okay. This one was interesting too. There was a note from Locked On Chargers where they were talking about Omarion Hampton and that he was already one of the best players outside the tackles last year. And now he has Mike McDaniel, whose scheme is built on outside runs. And I tweeted this out, guys. I truly have spent a lot of time on this in the past too. And I know a lot of people are kind of like Omarion Hampton haters. They like Keaton Mitchell. And I think Keaton Mitchell is a good football player and he'll have a good role. This team's going to run the ball a ton. They want to be multiple. They want to do a lot of running to set up play action. It's going to be all based off of efficiency for this team. But the interesting thing was that Omarion Hampton had basically, and I'll get to the Ryan Heath tweet on this too, but for one, A and B gap runs versus C gap runs. So C being like off the tackle and then out, like C plus is off tackle or further. Omarion Hampton had like the biggest differential between inside the tackles versus outside the tackles in terms of his runs, right? So C gap runs, he was basically at like a 5 point, this chart says 5.94 yards per carry on that versus the inside runs. He was much worse at inside runs last year. And then Achane had the highest percentage. So in terms of all of his rush attempts, percentage of runs that were C plus gap runs, so outside runs for Achane in 2025. That's what the offense wants to do. And Omarion Hampton is very well positioned to do it. C plus gap runs are 70% more explosive. Explosive runs lead to bigger fantasy points. This is all trending well for Omarion Hampton. The other part of this that I tweeted afterwards as I was listening was that they wouldn't be surprised if Hampton had 50 receptions last season. I've talked about this. His targets per route run were very close to what Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan had in their rookie seasons. Do I think that he's the same talent as those guys? I do not. Okay. I know I've been vocal about this, but I just think that we're kind of considering him more of like an ugly duckling compared to those guys. And he was in what I would consider a really strong running back draft class. If Ashton Jeanty wasn't in the class, like he would have been definitely the first running back selected. I think he would have been drafted earlier than where he was drafted because of that. And I think we'd be reacting a little bit more strongly to him. And it was viewed as a deep class too. So that led to teams being like, okay, I'll take running backs in round 2 or 3 or even 4. Cowboys round 5 with Jaden Blue, which was terrible. But that's kind of what I see. So I think he's live to have a really strong season. I wouldn't take him over James Cook. I wouldn't take him over Gene T just yet, but I do think like if you wanted to make the argument like, hey, is he going to have a better season than Gene T? Sure. Is he going to have a better season than James Cook? Sure, I could believe that. Unlikely to have a top 3 season if all 3 of the top 3 running backs off the board are healthy. But if we looked up at the board at the end of the season and said, hey, this guy just went nuclear, I wouldn't be surprised. People have asked me about the Patriots tight end situation behind Hunter Henry. Jack Westover, who's kind of like a fullback-ish type of player, was doing tight end 2 duties after Julian Hill got injured for the season, above Eli Raridan. But it sounds like they want Raridan to take that tight end 2 role. They're just not going to give it to him. He's a rookie. But they are still live to sign a veteran as well. There are still a few more blocking style veterans available that could come in. I don't think it would be something that would take away from Hunter Henry because it's more, again, like run blocking, pass pro type of role. But yeah, I see there being something there. Consistent with previous reports when it comes to the Patriots receiver room, it sounds like Kyle Williams is basically going to be buried for this team. And anyone that pays attention to Matt Harmon, he talked about Kyle Williams having the biggest sacrificial X profile he's ever seen. And I completely agree. Watching the film, looking at the data, he was basically running wind sprints last year, and they have better receivers to do that. Kayshon Boutte is a better wind sprint receiver, and he's still on the team. Matt Collins can operate in that situation sometimes as well. And then, if they decide to go with some slot receivers instead of him, they could sub in Afton Chisholm, Pop Douglas. Those guys were getting more reps than he was in training camp with the first team. So I think the wide receiver 3 role, whenever they do go in 11 personnel or 3 wide receiver sets, I think it's going to be a rotation between all of these guys, basically. And I think Kyle Williams is probably not even going to be in that rotation that much. He's going to be on the roster, but he might not be in the rotation that much. So it'll be a mix and match approach. And that's important for Romeo Doubs. So we're talking about super fantasy relevant type of player. The film on Doubs is actually pretty good. But what it does is if Pop or Chisholm are in the game, they're going to play the slot. They really can't do much on the outside. So that'll push Romeo Doubs, who is versatile, to play on the outside. But when Matt Collins, Kayshon Boutte, or even Kyle Williams, if he is in the game, play on the field, they can play outside. They will play outside, and that'll push Doubs to the slot. So the games where, if these guys get injured, Pop or Chisholm, or even both get injured, you're going to see Doubs do so much better out of that slot role. So I'm keeping an eye on that. If we need to hear more on him being in that slot position. This was the Ryan Heath tweet. So he has that same 5.94 yards per carry on C and D gap roles that I was talking about earlier. And he was top 3 in that, so close to HN. Blake Corum seemed to be a little bit above everybody else. These are good names. These are great running backs. So I think Omarion Hampton could really go off. Another tweet about the Seahawks running back room. This was from Corbin Smith in this Dan Vines, who covers the Seahawks. They're both people that cover the Seahawks, but Corbin Smith has credentials. I don't remember if Dan Vines does. And he was just talking about the running back room. He said, hey, Darren Price, yeah, he'll be the lead back, sure. If he doesn't, that sucks because that means that we wasted this pick. But George Solani, pass catching, pass pro. Manuel Wilson, short yardage. Now we're just chipping away. Like, these are two valuable things, right? Taking away from Jadarian Price. Now we're talking about a guy that's mainly between the 20s. And that's not something that I really like to see. That's basically the same role that I anticipate um, J.K. Dobbins to have. And J.K. Dobbins goes later, and J.K. Dobbins is a really good running back. Like, his numbers are insane. So I don't know, guys. And then you factor in Zach Charbonnet coming in later. Yeah, I think he needs to drop a little bit more at the moment. This is from this morning on the Raiders backfield. Ashton Jeanty and Mike Washington. Kubiak expects Jeanty to have a heavy workload. That shouldn't take away from Washington playing meaningful snaps. Washington was rotating with the first team occasionally. My take on this is, like, Jeanty is a bell cow. We don't have to worry about that. The big thing that I take from this note is that Mike Washington will be like the guy that comes in and gets like 10, 15% of the snaps, and then be that RB2 handcuff. And it seems pretty clear that that's what they want him to do. And that's important, right? Because we want to know who the handcuffs are. And it's not Dylan Laube. It doesn't sound like I don't think that they're going to sign a veteran like Najee Harris at the moment, but it's good to know. Okay, coming back to the Raiders and their receiver room, pretty clear top two for receivers. This article was talking about, like, hey, Jalen Naylor, Trey Tucker, those are like their clear top two, and like one of those two guys is going to be their wide receiver one, right? And we've talked about Tucker and Naylor. We talked about earlier as being a deep threat for the Vikings. Tucker basically was the deep threat also for the Raiders last year. So it'll be interesting to know, like, which one's going to play more of that underneath role. I think Naylor has more in his bag to do that. But we don't know who it's going to be. So I would be in favor of whoever is playing less of that deep threat role of the two. We know that Cousins is going to be more of a check down Charlie. Offense is going to struggle. Offensive line might struggle to start the season. So I'm thinking that we want the shorter route depth guy between the two. And so we'll keep an eye on that, what we hear in training camp. Then it sounds like Besh and Thornton are jockeying for wide receiver 3, but Malik Benson looked good in OTAs. And so there's this threat of a veteran, and then there's this threat of a veteran wide receiver that they could sign. I don't know. Like, it depends on what options these veteran wide receivers have. Like, does Tyreek Hill have another option? Does Debo have another option? Diggs will have options. I think Keenan Allen will have options too. So I don't think that those guys would go there, because this is kind of like, all right, you're not really going to be competing for much. But the other part of this is that reading deeper into the article, and I don't know that I posted it yet, and I will, they talk about Michael Mayer playing a lot. So they're going to be in two tight end sets quite a bit. And so I don't even think this wide receiver 3 role means anything. It's really about who's going to be the top receiver for the team and the wide receiver 2 for the team. The top wide receiver may end up being valuable for, like, redraft leagues. You may be able to find situations where it's like, hey, I can put this guy in. The wide receiver 2 is probably going to be more of like a best ball type of play, or if you know that, like, Tucker or Naylor get injured. All right, I think that wraps up all of the content that I put out. So I'm going to go back to questions that we have from the chat. Thanks for the 10K. Yeah, everybody that doesn't know, I'll go back to the tweet for a quick second if I can spend like a minute on this or less. But I am doing a little bit of a contest, right? So I'm celebrating my 10K followers. I want to give back to all of you guys who've been following me. There's a lot of guys that I have a photographic memory. At least that's what everybody tells me. Definitely remember the people that followed me in the first 1,000. Even in the next, like, 4,000, 5,000. There's definitely been people that have been following from the beginning where I just tweeted random, like, stats and film takes, stuff like that. But to celebrate the 10,000, I want to give a freebie out to people. So 1, you got to follow me. 2, retweet and comment on that post. I reposted. I'll probably repost it a couple more times. Comment on a player that you want to know more about, and then subscribe to this YouTube channel, The Cut Up. And when I do pick the winner, which will be Monday at some point, I will, like, reach out to that person and require to, like, see, like, the screenshots of, hey, you did this, you did that. I can't see, like, who all subscribes to my YouTube channel all the time. It depends on if you're private or not. So I'll be asking for that. But the freebie is 2 preseason tickets. Let's say you're a Minnesota Vikings fan and you live in Minnesota. Uh, Going to that game, maybe you're not super interested in seeing a bunch of backups, but I'm sure you're interested in maybe seeing Damon Claiborne play. I love going to preseason games. It's fun. It's good for kids. If you have kids, um, it's fun to just get drinks, hang out, get some food. You get to see some of these rookies play. It's fun. I really like it. Okay, so going back to the chat for questions. Um, some of my favorite sleepers. I've talked about tight ends. You actually DM'd me, Noob Life. So I'm gonna make sure that I talk about that a little bit more too. I'm gonna go in the single box so that we don't have this crazy stuff scrolling and distracting people. Favorite sleepers. I'm gonna go to Underdog and just look at ADPs too, because when you're thinking off the top of your head, sometimes it's not like the easiest to go super deep on players. But if I'm looking at let's just say a sleeper is like 150 plus ADP on Underdog right now, right? So 150 plus ADP, I'm looking at it, and I'll just maybe I should share my screen too and try to scroll through on that so that you guys can see what I'm doing. I will do that so that people can see. Okay, so 150 ADP on Underdog is what I'm going to use as kind of like the barometer. Brenton Strange, love him. He was really strong in my receiver score model. I've talked about him quite a bit. I think he could be a really strong value. I know he's kind of like pass catcher number 4 in the offense, but there's going to be games where he's going to do really well. And I'm thinking even from a redraft lens, he's going to play a lot this season. They really love him. Jauan Jennings is another one. Talked about him already on this pod. I think he's live to be the second best receiver on this team from a yardage standpoint and reception standpoint and touchdowns. And I'm not trying to say that as a hot take. I just really do think that his role is better suited for what their offense is going to try to do. Trey Tucker or Jalen Naylor, one of those two are going to stand out. Denzel Boston. This is funny because I feel like I'm going after every name, but I promise it's going to get thin soon. Denzel Boston, I think he's going to play more than Casey Conception to start the season because he has more of a unique X wide receiver role and capability. He was a guy that Brett Whitefield, who's an excellent film evaluator, had as a first round talent, got drafted in the second round. And he was super high on him, even above Mekhi Lemon. So I think he's a good bet as well. Jonah Coleman is in my opinion, the true handcuff to J.K. Dobbins, because everything that I've read is he's kind of like the insurance play on J.K. Dobbins, and that R.J. Harvey has his own role. So I think he's a decent kind of like sleeper too. Ryan Flournoy, I've never really leaned into the idea of a wide receiver handcuff. But at this price, I do think he's a wide receiver handcuff. I think that in Dynasty, I would buy. Especially because I don't think that they're going to bring back George Pickens. And I think that he's going to be their wide receiver too of the future. If one of the two get injured, he's going to have some big weeks. We know that Dak Prescott can throw for 4,500 yards in a season. And why not have the number 2 option in that offense? He would be he's going to be their third option in the offense above Jake Ferguson, in my opinion, this season. And I'm a huge Cowboys fan, so I'm deep in the weeds on them. If you think I'm deep in the weeds on any other team right now, because I am reading everything, I'm more deep on the Cowboys than any other team. I'm not as big into Tesla, Trey Harris, Deebo Samuel. I think Bigsby is a good handcuff. Everything that I read, people think that he is one of the top 32 running backs in the NFL in general. And so I think that, if Saquon goes down, it's a strong offensive line. Tank Bigsby will have a big role. Brian Robinson is the clear handcuff for Bijan. They don't really have anything behind him. So that's a good pick too, because we like guys that we know are definitely going to have a big role whenever the starter goes down. And a lot of times it's not clear, but for Brian Robinson and Tank Bigsby, it's very clear to me. Greg Dulcich, a great value as well. I think he's going to be their top pass catching option when he's healthy. That's always the question with him. I like him quite a bit. I do not like Antonio Williams. I think they're going to sign a receiver. I don't think they're even going to play with a slot receiver on the field that often this season. I think they want to be in 12 personnel, and I think that's kind of the role that he's going to play. So I'm not a huge fan. Haven't drafted him in Basketball Mania yet. Keep on going. Keep on going. Terrence Ferguson, they keep talking about him as their wide receiver 3. He's a deep threat tight end, which is weird. Like, just doesn't happen very often. But let's say Devontae does get hurt. Puka always misses time. Like, do they elevate him? Is he like he would still play his tight end ish, like wide receiver 3 slot kind of ish role, but that would elevate him in terms of pecking order. I think he's a guy that could kind of break out a little bit more this season. Rams notorious for kind of redshirting players a lot, and they even talk about it in articles as well. So that's another one. I like Gunnar Helm too. He scored super well in my receiver score model. Looked incredible last year. A guy that had a really strong profile coming out of the University of Texas too. Let's see. There's other guys. This Jaden Blue, Marshawn Lloyd kind of tier as well. I'm interested in. I think that we're scared about them because we don't know what their role might be. But if everything goes smoothly, they're both going to have a role in their offenses. Oh, Dontavian Wicks too. Like I think he's actually going to play more than Mekhi Lemon to start the season, just given that he plays more of an outside receiver role. So Blue and Marshawn Lloyd are guys that I'm pretty interested in because I think that they are. I think that they're going to have a complementary role in their backfield, regardless, like as long as they're healthy. And then if their starter got hurt, they could get elevated in terms of what their role looks like. And that's, getting that at like a super late round price is super hard to do. Keep on scrolling, keep on scrolling. Not really into a lot of these guys. You have to okay, George Holani, I've talked about him a lot. I think he's just an incredible value right now. He's going in the last round of drafts. Like that, what are we doing here? Rashad Bateman, another guy who's going to play a lot, as long as they don't sign a veteran free agent who's impactful, right? Like Diggs is probably the only Diggs, maybe Keenan Allen, maybe Debo. Like those are the guys that I'm scared of. Um, I think Tyquan Thornton can get you some spikes. I don't think he's like a redraft player, but I think he gets you some spikes. So I'm interested in a Tyquan Thornton as well. Um, RB2, I think, is going to be Kalen Black for the 49ers based off of everything that I read. I'm not seeing him on the list just yet, but I am into him. We know how fragile CMC can be. I think that he's a really good option as well. In terms of quarterbacks, I'll do that too, just because I think people are somewhat fading dudes here, and it's hard to find late round quarterbacks. Gino, I talked about him, and I think Tua is actually not a terrible pick because I think they want him to win the job. Basically, his skill set aligns with what they've talked about, um, and I think that he's adequate. Like, can he give me some weeks if I have buys? Yes. Let's say that this offense looks decent. Let's say that, Zachariah Branch looks good or something. Like they have weapons around him that are good athletes. Invest in it. He's shown that he could be a top leader in pass yardage before. It's hard to find guys that have done anything at this point in the draft. So I'm interested in him as well. Going back to the full board, there's still like one or two guys that I haven't touched on yet. So Kamani Vidal, I think he is the like true backup handcuff to Omarion Hampton. That Keaton Mitchell has his own role, and that maybe he would get elevated. Like, let's say that Hampton got injured, maybe Keaton Mitchell goes from 7 touches to 10. But I think Kamani Vidal would probably get the bulk of the work, maybe like 15 touches in a game. So I think he's live as well. That was one of the questions in the chat too. Michael Mayer, the only tight end that I will say has contingent upside value, like a super handcuff. He's a top, like I think he's a top 10 talent in the NFL when it comes to pass catching at tight end, and he just landed in a super unfortunate situation. Had some spikes last year when Bowers was injured. He's a guy that I think is super live, especially in um, like 20 round drafts or tight end premium. Like you want a handcuff type of that, like that. Like I think he's a good pick there. Jake Tongue's maybe a week one streamer. Kittle will probably play most of the season, as long as he's healthy. But if they decide not to play him week one, I think Tongues is a good one too. Uh, if Likely went down, I like Theo Johnson. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Those are some of the sleepers. Caleb Douglas is a decent one too. I think he could be lead the team in receiving yards. It's just a mixed bag for the Dolphins, and why not take a shot on the guy that they spent a third round pick on, and by all reports are strong. So going back to the chat, if there's any more questions, I'm going to keep going. Free is desirable. Congrats on 10K. Thank you guys. Dubs, wide receiver 20 season incoming. Killing it this offseason. Jordan Tyson. Yeah. Um, yeah, there's nothing. There's nothing on Jordan Tyson. He didn't participate in this like retreat that the team had. I think he was there. Um I think every single guy that is a pass catcher on the team went to the Saints retreat, but I don't see or haven't heard that he participated in that retreat. And so I'm still like kind of worried about his hamstring. But I will say he is probably my favorite rookie receiver pick because of his role being short, intermediate, slot sometimes, rotating into that slot role. Um, and then yeah, I think he's an immense talent too, really good separator. So I'm pretty bullish about his opportunity on that team. Um, yeah, I would still draft him right now, hoping that he stays healthy. If you're deep on the Cowboys, can you give a rundown on your thoughts on how that backfield will play out? Yeah. Javonte is the clear lead back. I wouldn't call him a bell cow. I'd call him a workhorse, which I think is like a difference of maybe like, I don't know, a couple touches a game. But he's going to do all the touchdown stuff. But Brian Schottenheimer said that he wouldn't be surprised if he had, uh, something like 12 to 13 touchdowns. So he's a good value, I think, where he's going right now. But I'd say Jaden Blue is going to play more on pass downs than you would expect. Uh, Javante didn't really do much from a pass game perspective last year. That doesn't mean he can't. He's shown that in his profile he can. I just think that, with Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, there's just not as much. And now Flournoy is showing up. There's just not as much out there. But I think what they'll do with Jaden Blue is more like design touches, where they try to get him on like Texas routes over the middle, like send guys deep, open up that middle of the field, get Jaden Blue on some like easy stuff. Um, yeah, I'm excited. I think Jaden Blue is a good like complementary piece. I still think Javante is going to be the like workhorse back. Jaden Blue's live for drafting late in drafts right now, in my opinion. Have not heard much at all on James Conner. Another question from the chat. I'm answering questions right now. I'm done with all the news. If you guys are just tuning in, feel free to drop something. I'd love to answer it. There's one more question left after this, so if you have another one, I can get to it. I have time. Have not heard much at all on James Conner. Do you think he gets moved this preseason? $1 million question right now. And I have tweeted about this quite a bit. There's not room for all four running backs, right? So we have to think one of the two between Trey Benson and James Conner gets squeezed. I think the team is more apt to keep James Conner. And the reason why I feel that way is because he's more of like a franchise cornerstone. Like he's given everything. He's reliable in pass pro, can step in if like let's say that they want to get like let's say that Jeremiah Love gets injured. They can give Tyler Algier most of the rushing role. They could still give some to James Conner as well and trust him, but they can very much trust James Conner in the pass down role. Um, and so I think that they're more apt to want to keep him than because they don't need a guy that has potential. They have Jeremiah Love, like that's what his stuff is. And then even Tyler Algier, they signed him. And then he can be a veteran to kind of help guide Jeremiah Love navigate the NFL, show him like where the holes are. So I think James Conner stays. I think Trey Benson's the one that goes. And I think if they cut him, that he's going to I don't think they'll have a chance at keeping him on the practice squad. So if he gets cut, I think he's live to go anywhere else. Minnesota's a place that he could go. I know people are interested in that backfield. Um, I don't know. The Commanders are a team that I could see be out there as well. All right. Another chat out here. So seeing from Oliver von Carl. Do you think you could make another video on Ador soon? Yeah, I'd be happy to. Um, I'm happy to go through the article, talk about it more, maybe talk about some more players than who I referenced in the article. I think it's more applicable to receivers because tight ends don't. And this was part of your other question, so I'll just do that. I think it's more applicable to receivers because tight ends don't really. And Ador is average depth of route. It's different than average depth of target. Most people know average depth of target, but what I'm trying to measure is how many times a guy runs deep, how many times a guy runs intermediate, how many times he runs short. Um, it's less applicable to tight ends because they don't do much other than short and intermediate. They don't run deep very often. The only guys in history that have really done more of the deep threat type of stuff, 2023 Kyle Pitts and Terrence Ferguson last year. Um, but even then, like I can't say to fade those types of players at tight end because getting 600 yards at tight end sometimes can be valuable depending on your format and what you're trying to do. Um, so I don't like to. It's not as applicable to tight ends. Even Tucker Craft, like more of his stuff is like uh, play action, block for a second, release, get me the ball in the flat. I'm 5 yards down the field, get me the ball, let me like get some yak, and then and Kittle does the same thing. Like they don't tight ends don't run as many real routes as real receivers do, so it's just different. All right, I don't see any more chats, so I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm probably gonna hit a best ball draft here after this, just to get my numbers up there. But really appreciate everybody tuning in. If you have questions, feel free to reference it on Twitter, and you can join any of my live shows. On top of that, again, I had that one tweet about 10K followers. I'm doing a freebie. Go follow that. Go on my page. Cheers from Ireland. That's awesome. Go drink a Guinness. I love Guinness. Uh, Appreciate you guys. Take care.